Sophia gathered the heavy layers of her wedding gown in both hands as she slowly climbed the staircase. The soft satin dragged against the marble steps, while the thin straps of her heels pressed painfully against her skin. After an entire day of standing, smiling, greeting people, and pretending she wasn't mentally exhausted, the house was quiet compared to the loud wedding hall they had just left behind. Only the faint ticking of a clock somewhere downstairs and the soft sound of Julian pulling her luggage behind him filled the silence. Sophia kept her eyes lowered while walking. Her veil had already been removed hours ago, but her hair still remained perfectly styled, pinned neatly behind her shoulders. The expensive jewelry around her neck suddenly felt suffocating now that the crowd was gone. Everything about today felt heavy. The ring on her finger, the dress on her body. Even her own name sounded unfamiliar now that it carried someone else's surname beside it. Julian walked 2 steps behind her, one hand gripping the handle of her suitcase while the other stayed awkwardly free by his side. His eyes kept moving toward her unconsciously, every few seconds, not in a creepy way, more like he was making sure she wouldn't trip. The staircase was long, and her gown kept getting caught beneath her heels every few steps. Once, twice, then again. He noticed the way she slightly lost balance for a second while trying to lift the front of the dress higher. Without even thinking properly, he immediately walked ahead of her. Just a second. His voice came out soft. He quickly dragged her suitcase up the remaining stairs first and left it near the end before hurrying back down toward her again. "I'll help you with the dress," he said gently. His fingers carefully reached toward the side of the fabric. But the moment his hand almost touched the gown, Sophia instinctively moved slightly away. "You don't have to," she said quietly. "I can manage." Her tone wasn't harsh. There was no anger in it, but that tiny movement away from him still made Julian stop immediately. His hand remained hanging awkwardly in the air for 1 second too long before he slowly lowered it again. "Oh, okay." He suddenly didn't know where to keep his hands anymore. Sophia avoided looking at him and simply continued walking upstairs herself, and Julian quietly followed behind her. Because that was all he had been doing since the marriage started, following her carefully, trying not to make her uncomfortable, trying not to look too affected every time she pulled away from him. Sophia Sterling had just married Julian Vance. To the world, it looked like the perfect union between 2 powerful families. The Sterlings owned one of the biggest luxury construction companies in the country, while the Vances controlled international shipping routes, private ports, and import businesses across several countries. For years, both families had worked together as business partners. But recently another rival company had started targeting both sides aggressively, trying to take over contracts and weaken their influence in the market. Merging the families through marriage solved everything at once. It legally tied both companies together permanently. It protected their shares, their assets, their public reputation, and most importantly, it stopped competitors from getting close enough to destroy either family separately. A marriage was easier than risking billions. At least that was how their parents saw it. For Sophia, that was all this marriage was, a deal. But for Julian, it had never been just a deal, not even close. He had loved her quietly for years. Julian had loved her long before any business deal existed, long before marriage discussions even began. It started quietly, small things at first. Seeing her at business parties, standing near her father while looking completely uninterested in conversations around her, watching her secretly slip outside during gatherings just to sit alone for a few minutes, the way she always tucked her hair behind her ear while listening carefully to people, the way she smiled politely even when she looked exhausted. He noticed everything. At family dinners, his eyes always searched for her first without him realizing it. At events, he memorized the color of her dresses. He even made social media accounts just to follow her. But he never accepted his requests. Still, he kept loving her anyway. And when he first heard their parents discussing marriage between them, for a few minutes he thought life had finally become kind to him. Until he saw Sophia's reaction. She didn't want this. That realization alone was enough for him to try stopping everything himself. He argued with his parents for the first time in years, tried delaying meetings, tried convincing them this wasn't right. But the contracts had already begun moving. Lawyers were already involved. By then, the marriage wasn't personal anymore. It became a business. And now, all Julian could do was try to become someone Sophia might someday willingly choose herself. "This is your room," Julian stopped outside a large double door upstairs and stepped aside for her immediately. Sophia slowly entered first and completely froze. The room looked painfully familiar, not identical, but close enough that her chest tightened instantly. The bed stood in the exact same direction as her old bedroom back home. The wardrobe was designed almost similarly. The shelves, the curtains, even the soft cream and beige colors matched the tones she always preferred. A small reading chair stood near the window, exactly where she used to keep one in her old room. It looked like someone had rebuilt pieces of her previous life carefully inside this house. Her eyes burned unexpectedly. Julian noticed immediately and started speaking nervously. "I tried my best," he admitted awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know it still doesn't look as nice as your room before, but I didn't want you feeling uncomfortable here." Sophia lowered her head slowly. She didn't know why that hurt more, the effort, or the fact nobody had ever paid this much attention to her comfort before. "Why would you even do this?" she whispered. "It's not like I'll stay here forever," she continued. "Once the business deal is over, we'll divorce anyway." The words physically hurt him. He felt it immediately in his chest, but even then, he smiled softly, that same awkward smile he always wore around her. "Still," he said gently, "it was my responsibility to make you feel at home." Sophia stayed silent. "I know I'm still basically a stranger to you, maybe even someone you barely know, but you're my wife now." His voice stayed calm despite the ache inside him. "And for as long as you are my wife, I'll take care of you properly. That's the least I can do." Sophia pressed her lips together, because he wasn't forcing anything, wasn't demanding anything, wasn't acting like a husband with rights over her. He was simply trying. Julian took a small step back when she still didn't reply. "Call me if you need anything," he said quietly. "My room is right beside yours." And then he walked out slowly, gently closing the door behind him. Sophia didn't even look back. Then finally, she dropped onto the bed heavily. The mattress felt soft beneath her instantly, too familiar, even after trying everything. This marriage still happened. Her eyes slowly moved around the room again. Everything here screamed care, effort, and that somehow made tears gather harder in her eyes. It wasn't that she hated Julian. She didn't. That was the problem. If he were cruel, this would have been easier. But he wasn't. He was kind, patient, and Sophia didn't know what to do with that. And it wasn't that she hated marriage itself either. She was already 28 years old, successful, educated, working in her father's company for years, or more accurately, working the way her father wanted her to work. Her whole life had been controlled by him. Every decision, every choice, every future plan. Even working in the family company wasn't truly her decision. Her father always presented it proudly, like she was some perfect daughter carrying the sterling legacy. But in reality, she had dreams completely different from corporate meetings and business dinners. Dreams she was never allowed to chase. Relationships were forbidden. Freedom was controlled carefully. Even friendships were monitored. Her entire life had always been planned for her. And now, even her marriage belonged to someone else's decision. That was what hurt her pride the most. Not the marriage itself, but the fact that once again, she failed to choose herself, and being nice to Julian would mean that she has accepted this marriage, and it would be the last thing she wanted. She slowly laid back against the bed and stared up at the ceiling. Should I run away? The thought had followed her all day, while wearing her wedding dress, while walking down the aisle, while smiling for the cameras, and now, inside this room, built carefully to feel like home. For the first time, she felt tired of fighting that thought at all. It was already 2 in the morning, yet Sophia still hadn't slept even for a second. The room was silent except for the soft rustling of bed sheets every time she turned restlessly from one side to another. The moonlight slipped through the curtains faintly, covering the room in a dim silver glow, while the digital clock beside the bed kept reminding her how late it had become. 2:07 a.m., 2:19 a.m., 2:34 a.m. Her eyes burned from exhaustion, but sleep still refused to come near her. Sophia let out a frustrated breath and covered her face with both hands for a moment before sitting up on the bed suddenly. Fuck. Her voice came out weak and tired. Her medicines. She forgot to pack them. The sleeping pills prescribed by her doctor months ago when her insomnia had started becoming unbearable. Sophia immediately rubbed her forehead harshly. Great. Just great. She leaned back against the headboard and closed her eyes tightly. Though honestly, those medicines barely worked anymore either. Sometimes they made her dizzy, sometimes numb, but actual sleep, that almost never came properly, especially not in places unfamiliar to her. Back at her parents' house, whenever nights became this difficult, she always ended up quietly walking into her grandmother's room. Her grandmother never asked questions, never forced conversations. Sophia would simply crawl beside her silently, bury herself against her chest, and eventually fall asleep while her grandmother stroked her hair gently. That memory alone made her throat ache suddenly. A tear slipped down her cheek before she even realized it. "I miss you already," she whispered brokenly. Her grandmother still didn't know the full truth behind this marriage. Nobody told her. Because her health had become fragile recently, even small stress made her blood pressure rise dangerously high. And Sophia couldn't bear becoming the reason something happened to her. So instead, she smiled through the wedding, pretended everything was fine. For her grandmother's sake, Sophia slowly hugged her knees closer to herself on the bed. Her eyes kept moving toward the door unconsciously, like some part of her still expected her grandmother to walk in and ask why she was awake. But nobody came. Only silence stayed beside her. Julian stood alone in the kitchen while the rest of the mansion remained silent in the early morning darkness. The clock on the microwave read 6:12 a.m. Outside the giant glass windows, the sky was still pale and dull, not fully touched by sunrise yet. The house staff hadn't started moving around properly either. The soft sizzling sound from the pan broke the silence. Julian carefully flipped another pancake before lowering the flame slightly. He wasn't someone who usually cooked, at least not often. But today he wanted to, because sometime last year, during a business dinner at Sophia's house, he remembered hearing her grandmother laugh while saying, "Sophia only eats pancakes happily when she's upset," and somehow, out of every important business detail Julian handled daily, that small sentence stayed in his memory perfectly. Julian pressed his lips together softly while pouring more batter into the pan. Truthfully, he barely slept last night too. Sophia was here now, inside his house, as his wife, and half the night he kept wondering if she cried after he left her room. The other half he spent trying not to stand outside her door like some insane person just to check if she needed anything. So instead, he came downstairs early and started cooking. At least doing something for her made him feel less useless. A small smile slowly appeared on his lips the moment he suddenly heard footsteps coming downstairs. His eyes lifted immediately toward the kitchen entrance. And there she was. Sophia walked inside quietly, wearing an oversized cream nightshirt that reached mid-thigh, her hair slightly messy and falling around her shoulders naturally. Her eyes looked swollen slightly, like she either cried or barely slept. "Morning, Sophia." His voice softened automatically around her. "How did you sleep?" Sophia avoided his eyes while walking toward the counter. "Good." One word, clearly a lie. Julian noticed immediately. Sophia grabbed a glass and poured herself water. "I'm making pancakes," he said softly. "Come sit. I'll serve breakfast in a minute." Sophia froze for the smallest second before replying. "I don't like pancakes." The spatula in Julian's hand paused midair. He was caught off guard. Oh. For a moment, he looked disappointed in himself. "That's okay," he said immediately. "Tell me what you like instead. I'll make that." Sophia shook her head softly while drinking water. "You don't have to, but I want to." Julian instantly cleared his throat and calmed himself down slightly. "I mean," he corrected awkwardly, "it's breakfast anyway. Just tell me what you usually eat." Sophia's chest tightened unexpectedly at the way he was trying so hard. Since yesterday, every effort he made had only been met with distance from her, and still he continued trying carefully like he was afraid of upsetting her. He didn't deserve this treatment, especially when maybe he was trapped in this marriage too. Maybe he also had no choice. Sophia slowly lowered the glass onto the counter. I'll just eat the pancakes." The relief on Julian's face appeared immediately before he could hide it. "Okay." Julian walked toward the dining table and gently pulled a chair back for her. "Sit." Sophia hesitated briefly before quietly sitting down. "It won't take long," he continued while walking back toward the stove. "Do you usually drink coffee in the mornings? Or smoothies maybe? I can make one." "I don't really drink anything specific." Julian nodded instantly. "All right." He simply opened the fridge instead and grabbed a glass bottle of fresh juice. "Then try this." he said while pouring it into a glass for her. I drink it after workouts. Sophia's eyes slowly lifted toward him properly for the first time. Only now did she really notice him. Not the businessman version. Not the perfectly dressed heir she saw during corporate events. This version looked entirely different. His white t-shirt clung slightly against his shoulders and chest from leftover sweat after exercise. The sleeves stretched around his arms whenever he moved. Gray sweatpants sat low on his waist casually while home slides tapped softly against the kitchen floor. His hair looked messy and soft without styling, equals comfortable, and annoyingly attractive. His forearms looked muscular and veiny. While flipping the pancakes casually, Sophia immediately looked away the moment she realized herself staring, because reality hit her again instantly. None of this was truly hers. This man wasn't someone she chose. He was someone chosen for her. Julian. The sound of his name from her mouth made him turn around immediately. His heart genuinely skipped, because hearing her say his name felt embarrassingly important to him. Why, yes, he answered quickly. Yeah, Sophia? Are you happy with this marriage? The question made him freeze slightly, but only slightly, because his answer came immediately after. Yes, no hesitation, no thinking. Yes, I am. The speed of his answer made her stomach twist strangely. Why? Julian looked down at the pancakes instead of her face, because if he looked directly at her right now, he might say something stupid, because he swallowed softly. I don't really have a reason not to be happy about it. That wasn't fully the truth. The truth was much worse. The truth was that he had loved her for years, that marrying her felt like every impossible thing in his life suddenly becoming real. But he couldn't tell her that, not when she already looked trapped enough. She didn't ask more questions. A few minutes later, Julian finally placed the breakfast plate in front of her. The pancakes looked perfect, warm butter melting slowly over them, fresh strawberries and blueberries placed neatly beside them. Julian sat across from her while she started eating slowly, and immediately, he noticed it. The way her eyes kept closing every few seconds, the slow blinking, the exhaustion written all over her face. You look tired. Sophia instantly straightened slightly. I'm fine. She even forced a small smile afterward, but it looked weak. Julian stayed silent for a moment before speaking softly again. Were you missing your grandma? Sophia almost let out a broken laugh hearing that, because somehow, he guessed correctly immediately. It's only been one day, she replied, pretending it wasn't affecting her badly. But Julian could see through it easily. The homesickness, the sleeplessness, the sadness, everything sat clearly in her eyes. His heart clenched for her. Then more gently, try sleeping again after breakfast. Sophia looked down at her plate silently. Maybe you'll sleep better after eating properly. She nodded. Under the table, her foot bounced restlessly against the floor continuously. Julian noticed, but never pointed it out, never made her uncomfortable about it. Instead, he simply watched her carefully for a few moments before speaking again. You know, Sophia slowly looked up. You can tell me if something's bothering you. Then after a brief pause, at least while I'm your husband. The sentence made something ache strangely inside Sophia's chest. He slowly stood up from the chair. I'll make tea. Warm tea might help you relax a little. It had been 3 days since the wedding. 3 nights of staring at the ceiling. 3 nights of turning from one side of the bed to the other until morning sunlight started leaking through the curtains. 3 nights without sleep. Sophia sat against the headboard with tired eyes, her blanket gathered around her waist, while the digital clock beside the bed blinked 2:47 a.m. in cold white numbers. Her head hurt, not the normal kind of headache, the exhausting kind. The kind that comes when the body is desperate for sleep but the mind refuses to shut down. The medicines were still nowhere. I know I packed them, she whispered weakly. Earlier that evening, she had called her mother again, hoping maybe there had been a misunderstanding. But her mother sounded distracted as always. Sophia, I already told you. I packed them myself, and that was it. No concern. No, are you sleeping okay? Just another conversation ended in a hurry. Now, if the medicines were truly lost, she would have to book another appointment, sit in a hospital for hours, explain her insomnia again, get a new prescription. The thought alone exhausted her. I really don't want to go to a hospital, she muttered. She slowly looked toward the bedroom door. Then another thought entered her head. Should I go to Julian's room? The words made her sit still. It was almost 3 in the morning, and yet, the thought didn't feel scary. Over the last 3 days, Julian had done everything carefully, quietly, patiently. He never forced conversations, never acted like she owed him affection because of the marriage, never crossed her space. Instead, he kept trying in the smallest ways possible, making breakfast for her, leaving tea outside her room when she looked tired, adjusting the air conditioning because he noticed she curled deeper into blankets when cold, keeping fresh flowers near the balcony. Even his room door remained slightly open every night, almost like he wanted her to know she would never be unwelcome. Sophia pressed her lips together. The uncomfortable feeling in her chest had started changing recently. 3 days ago, she felt trapped in this marriage. Now, she just felt guilty because Julian was trying so hard while she kept standing far away from him emotionally. Like she was afraid that even one soft moment would mean she had accepted this marriage completely. She buried her face into her palms and groaned softly. "If I don't sleep soon, I'm actually going to collapse." Then immediately she stood up. "I'll just sleep on his couch." She nodded seriously at her own idea. "Yeah, that's completely normal." She started rambling under her breath while fixing her oversized sleep shirt. "I'll just say there was a cockroach in my room, or a spider, or something flying." She paused seriously. "Actually, yes. Flying insects are terrifying." Another pause. "What is wrong with being scared of insects anyway?" "Nothing. Completely normal. I'm sure Julian is scared of them too." The image of Julian Vance, 6'2", muscular, emotionally controlled Julian, screaming over a cockroach almost made her laugh from exhaustion. Her heartbeat slowly became louder the closer she got to his room. And there it was, just slightly open, exactly like every other night. A breath she didn't realize she was holding finally escaped her. At least she wouldn't need to knock. Carefully, she pushed the door open a little more and stepped inside. The room smelled faintly like cedar wood, clean sheets, and Julian's cologne. Warm lighting glowed softly from the lamp near the bookshelf. And then her eyes found him. Julian was asleep on the bed, laying on one side with the blanket resting low on his waist. One arm was tucked beneath the pillow while the other rested lazily over the sheets. His face looked completely different while sleeping. His lips were pushed into the smallest pout and his messy dark hair had fallen over his forehead. A tiny laugh almost escaped her throat, but she swallowed it immediately. Then her eyes moved toward the couch and widened. Oh no. The entire couch was covered with work. Laptop open, files everywhere, business papers, documents stacked messily. Even his glasses rested on top of one file. Clearly, he had worked there until falling asleep. Sophia stood awkwardly in the middle of the room. Then slowly, her eyes moved back toward the bed. Julian was sleeping on the absolute edge of it, leaving enough space beside him, like someone was already supposed to be there. Her heartbeat instantly became louder. The idea of sleeping beside him made her stomach tighten nervously. Would that even be okay without asking him? She chewed nervously on her lower lip. Then another thought came. I'll wake up before him. Problem solved. At least according to her exhausted brain. Carefully, extremely carefully, she walked toward the empty side of the bed and slowly lifted the blanket. The mattress dipped softly beneath her weight as she slipped inside. The sheets were warm. Her breathing caught instantly when the back of her fingers accidentally brushed against his hand. Sophia froze completely. Her eyes widened in panic as she slowly moved farther away from him. Julian only shifted slightly in his sleep before becoming still again. She stared at him for another few seconds just to make sure he wasn't awake, then finally relaxed. Slowly, she settled deeper into the pillows, and the moment her body relaxed against the mattress, something changed. The tightness in her chest eased. The constant buzzing in her head quieted. For the first time in days, her body stopped feeling alert. Maybe because another person was nearby. She already trusted Julian more than she wanted to admit. Sophia pulled the blanket closer beneath her chin and looked at his sleeping face one last time. I'm sorry. Her voice came out barely above a breath. Then finally, sleep took over her completely, like a child who had spent the whole day crying quietly and had finally found somewhere safe enough to rest. Julian woke up before his alarm. Morning sunlight slipped quietly through the curtains, painting soft golden lines across the bedroom walls. But for Julian, this morning felt nothing like his usual mornings. Usually, he woke up the second his alarm vibrated. Then he'd stand in front of her door, just for a moment. He never knocked. He'd just stand there for a few seconds like an idiot, then turn and go downstairs. Juice first, then whatever he could make without waking her. Eggs if he had time, toast if he didn't. Always something warm left covered on the counter with a note tucked under the edge of the plate. Eat before it gets cold. But today, Julian Vance had been awake for almost 20 minutes and hadn't moved a single inch. Not on the opposite side of the huge bed with distance between them, not awkwardly at the edge, right beside him, so close that her warmth had completely surrounded one side of his body. Julian lay completely frozen under her. Her head rested near his chest, while one of her hands lay softly against his stomach, fingers curled loosely into the fabric of his shirt. Her other hand was tucked near his side, almost like she unconsciously searched for him in her sleep. And his own arm, still stretched carefully above her head from the position he fell asleep in. For a long moment, he didn't even breathe properly. His mind genuinely could not process what he was seeing. Sophia, his wife, sleeping beside him willingly. His throat tightened painfully. It had only been a few days since the wedding. Few days of her avoiding eye contact, giving short replies, keeping emotional distance between them no matter how gently he approached her. He had accepted that. He never blamed her for it. He knew this marriage was forced on her, knew she was hurting. But this felt so intimate that it scared him a little. His eyes softened impossibly while looking at her. And God, she was beautiful. Not the polished beauty everyone praised at parties. Not the elegant Sophia Sterling from magazines and business events. This was different. This was soft. Her hair was messy across the pillow. Her lips were slightly puffed in sleep. Her cheeks looked fuller pressed against the sides of his chest. Julian swallowed hard. "You're so pretty, Sophia." The whisper barely left his mouth. Carefully, almost nervously, his trembling fingers lifted toward her face. It was probably the first time he had ever touched her this gently without overthinking every movement. His fingertips carefully brushed a strand of hair away from her cheek. That tiny touch alone made his stomach twist with nervous warmth. Her hand was still resting on his stomach, and he could feel it, every second of it. The weight of her hand, the warmth through his shirt. It completely fogged his mind. Couldn't think about anything except the woman sleeping beside him. His chest physically hurt from how much affection he was holding back. He wanted to touch her cheeks, wanted to brush his thumb over them, wanted to stay here the entire day doing absolutely nothing except looking at her. And for the first time in years, Julian didn't care that he was late for work. A helpless smile slowly tugged at his lips. Then suddenly, Sophia stirred. Julian panicked instantly. Her fingers twitched over his stomach. Her brows scrunched slightly as she shifted closer for 1 second before slowly waking up. Before she could fully open her eyes, Julian quickly shut his own and relaxed his face, pretending to still be asleep. Sophia blinked awake slowly, her sleepy mind taking a few seconds to understand where she was. Julian could practically feel the moment realization hit her. She was sleeping beside him, curled against him, on his bed. A tiny, horrified breath escaped her, then a very quiet, "Oh God." Julian had to bite the inside of his cheek to stop himself from smiling. The mattress shifted carefully as she slowly moved away from him inch by inch, probably trying not to wake him. Her movements were so cautious it almost felt adorable. Then came a tiny whispered curse under her breath when her hand accidentally brushed his arm again. Julian's lips twitched harder. A few seconds later, the warmth beside him slowly disappeared. The blanket lifted carefully. Soft footsteps crossed the room. Then, click, the bedroom door closed quietly. Only after hearing that sound did Julian finally open his eyes again. The empty space beside him still carried her warmth. He stared at it silently for a moment before exhaling the breath he had unknowingly been holding this whole time. Then suddenly he looked toward the bathroom. Should I just not bathe? He rubbed one hand over his face while laughing quietly to himself, because for the first time in his life, he genuinely didn't want the feeling of her near him to disappear. The dining room was quiet except for the faint clinking of cutlery against plates. Sophia sat quietly on one side of the table, slowly eating the breakfast Julian had prepared before leaving for work. Or at least, before pretending he was leaving for work normally, because Julian had barely been able to think straight ever since waking up with her beside him. And now sitting across from her while acting normal was becoming harder than he expected. His sleeves were rolled up neatly to his elbows, tie loosened slightly because he got late while staring at her sleeping face earlier. Sophia noticed it, and that somehow made her nervous. "How was your sleep?" he asked softly. the moment the question left his mouth, her fingers paused around the fork. Her heart skipped immediately. Did he know? Did he wake up while she was there? Did he realize she slept beside him the entire night? Her eyes lifted toward him carefully. Julian noticed the sudden nervousness on her face instantly, and his own expression softened immediately. That wasn't what he wanted. He didn't want her to feel embarrassed or cornered, so he quickly explained himself. Did the tea help? He asked more specifically this time. You looked tired last night. The tension inside her shoulders loosened almost immediately. Oh, so he didn't know. Of course, he didn't know. When she woke up earlier, he looked deeply asleep beside her. Sophia lowered her eyes toward her plate again, trying to ignore the way her stomach twisted, remembering how close she had been to him, how warm his body felt beside hers, how peacefully she had slept after days of struggling. Yeah, she nodded softly. It helped. I slept well. Julian's lips almost curved upward hearing that. Good. That meant she finally rested properly. And you? She asked quietly after a second. How was your sleep? God, if only she knew. Julian picked up his coffee cup just to hide the smile threatening his face. I slept really well. Sophia looked up at him for a second. Oh, yeah. A silence settled between them again. But unlike the previous days, it didn't feel uncomfortable anymore. Sophia quietly continued eating while Julian just looked at her occasionally without realizing. Then suddenly she frowned slightly after checking the clock on the wall. But aren't you getting late? She asked. It's already 10. Julian glanced toward the clock and sighed dramatically. I am late, he admitted. Very late, actually. Then why are you still sitting here? He looked at her for one extra second before answering. Because I didn't want to leave yet. But obviously he couldn't say that. So I can finish breakfast with my wife, he replied instead with a small awkward smile. Sophia immediately looked back down at her plate again, pretending to focus on cutting her pancake. Julian smiled at how cute she looked, trying to avoid eye contact. Then suddenly he cleared his throat nervously. There's, actually something I wanted to ask. Sophia looked up. What? Julian scratched the back of his neck slightly, suddenly looking oddly shy for a man who handled billion-dollar meetings without blinking. Can you maybe? He paused awkwardly. Accept my Instagram request? Sophia blinked, then immediately remembered. Right, he had sent her a request months ago, and she purposely ignored it. Oh, she said quickly, slightly embarrassed now. Right, sorry, I forgot. She immediately picked up her phone from beside the plate and opened the app. Julian tried very hard not to look too excited while watching her. A second later, she accepted the request and followed him back. There, she said softly, turning the phone screen toward him. Julian looked at it and nodded immediately, like it was no big deal. But internally, he genuinely felt happy, ridiculously happy. Thank you, he murmured. Sophia just nodded and placed her phone down again. After breakfast, Julian finally stood up from the chair and picked up his coat from the side. Sophia looked at him quietly while he fixed his watch and adjusted his sleeves. But something felt strange. He kept looking at her, not staring, just lingering glances, soft ones, like he wanted to say something but kept stopping himself. Sophia frowned slightly. Is there something else? Julian immediately froze. God, there actually was. His fingers tightened slightly around his car keys. Can I? He started nervously. Sophia waited. He swallowed. Can I? What? She asked, confused now. Just say it. Julian looked genuinely troubled for a second. It was such a simple thing. Just ask. But suddenly he felt 16 instead of a grown man. He started again, then gave up completely. Before Sophia could even understand what he was doing, Julian suddenly leaned forward slightly and pressed a quick, soft kiss against her forehead. Sophia froze instantly. Her eyes widened so much it almost made him smile. Julian stayed there for 1 second too long, staring at her shocked expression like he wanted to memorize it. Then immediately panic hit him too. Thank you, he blurted out awkwardly. Bye. And before she could even react properly, he turned around and practically escaped the dining room. Sophia stared after him in complete disbelief as the front door shut loudly a few seconds later. Silence filled the room again. Then, her fingers lifted toward her forehead where he kissed her. Her lips twitched immediately. A smile threatened so hard at the corners of her mouth that she had to bite her lower lip to stop it. He could have just asked. Then she shook her head. trying to hide her smile from absolutely nobody. Why was he so nervous over that? She whispered, coughing softly to distract herself from her own thoughts before picking up her fork again. But for the rest of breakfast, her fingers kept unconsciously touching her forehead. It had been 2 full weeks since their marriage, 2 weeks since Sophia unknowingly started sleeping beside Julian almost every single night. At first, Julian truly believed it was just for that day. But then, one night becoming two becoming 3, he thought maybe she was sleepwalking or unconsciously searching for warmth while sleeping. But now, it had become a routine neither of them talked about. And honestly, Julian didn't want to talk about it. Because every morning when he opened his eyes and found Sophia curled beside him, something inside his chest softened in a way he couldn't explain. But at the same time, it worried him too. Because although he loved waking up beside her more than anything, he also knew this wasn't coming from romance yet. It came from exhaustion. Tonight, the house was quiet again. The clock downstairs had already passed midnight. Julian stood outside Sophia's bedroom door with a warm cup of tea in his hand. Knock, knock. No response. He frowned slightly. Usually she answered quickly. He knocked again. Still nothing. A small worry instantly settled inside him. Sophia, he called softly through the door. Silence. Julian hesitated for a moment before finally pressing down the handle and opening the door slightly. The room was empty. The blanket on the bed was messy like she had just gotten up. Her slippers were missing from beside the bed too. Sophia, he called again while stepping inside. Then, the faint sound of running water came from the bathroom. Julian relaxed slightly. The bathroom door was already open halfway, warm light spilling out into the bedroom floor. He should stop here. He knew that. But when she still didn't answer him properly, concern made his feet move anyway. Sophia, are you in there? He asked while lightly peeking inside. And the moment he looked, a smile immediately pulled at his lips. Sophia stood in front of the sink with a toothbrush in her mouth, cheeks puffed slightly because she was gargling water. Her hair was tied loosely, a few wet strands stuck near her face, and she looked so soft and sleepy in her oversized nightshirt that Julian genuinely had to stop himself from laughing softly. Out of all the things he could have imagined, this felt like home. Sophia finally spit the water into the sink and turned toward him. Yes, she answered simply. Julian leaned his shoulder against the bathroom frame, still smiling without realizing it. I brought your tea. Sophia narrowed her eyes slightly while taking the towel to wipe her lips. Why are you smiling? Julian immediately looked away for 1 second. Nothing. He lied badly. Because how could he explain that seeing her brushing her teeth somehow made his entire mood better? Sophia walked closer toward him and took the warm cup from his hands carefully. Their fingers brushed slightly. Julian's eyes unconsciously lowered toward the wet strand stuck near the corner of her lips. Without thinking much, his hand lifted naturally and gently tucked the strand behind her ear. Sophia paused for 1 small second. Come on, he said softly. Let me tuck you in. And the way she nodded so naturally almost made him emotional. Because 2 weeks ago, Sophia barely even looked at him properly. Now she followed him quietly back toward the bed, while sipping her tea. Julian watched her carefully. You're drinking too fast, he said with a small smile. The tea isn't running away. Sophia looked at the cup then back at him awkwardly before slowing down slightly. Because yes, she was drinking fast intentionally. The sooner he went to sleep, the sooner she could sneak into his room later. And Julian knew it completely. At this point, he knew her routine by heart. She would wait around 20 or 30 minutes after he left, then quietly walk into his room, thinking he never noticed. And every single morning, she woke up in his arms, looking confused about how close she had moved during sleep. He knew everything, but he never teased her about it, never embarrassed her, never once mentioned that he woke up before her almost daily now. Because if pretending not to know made her comfortable enough to keep coming back, then he would happily pretend forever. Sophia finally finished the tea quickly and placed the empty cup on the nightstand before immediately slipping under the blanket. Julian watched her with the softest expression. She looked so eager to sleep. He slowly pulled the blanket higher until it rested comfortably near her chest. All right, he whispered quietly. Sleep well. Then gently, like it was the most natural thing in the world now, he leaned down and pressed a soft kiss against her forehead. Neither of them reacted strongly anymore. That was the dangerous part. These little moments had stopped feeling awkward somewhere along the way, and for the first time in weeks, she realized she hadn't cried missing her grandmother anymore. "I'll go now," he said softly. "Good night, Sophia." Sophia held the blanket slightly tighter around herself. "Yeah," she replied quickly. "Good night, Julian." The curtains swayed gently from the cool breeze coming through the slightly opened window. Everything was the same as every other morning. The same room, the same blanket, the same bed, the same woman sleeping beside him. And yet Julian felt like it was the first time every single day. Sophia was still in his arms, just like every morning for the past 2 weeks. His arm was wrapped securely around her waist, holding her close against his chest. Her body fit naturally against him, as if she belonged there. Her head rested on his bicep while one of her hands was curled near his stomach. Their legs were tangled together beneath the blanket, and Julian was wide awake. He had been awake for a long time, just watching her. His fingers moved slowly through her hair, starting from her scalp and gliding gently down the soft strands. Again and again, his chin rested lightly on top of her head. A small smile sat on his lips. Every morning he promised himself he wouldn't get used to this, and every morning he failed, because every morning he woke up and found Sophia beside him, and it felt like the best part of his day. After a few minutes, she finally stirred. A small movement. Her brows scrunched slightly as sleep slowly left her. Sophia blinked. For a moment she was confused, comfortable and safe. Then reality slowly returned. Her eyes widened. She could feel a strong chest beneath her cheek, a firm arm around her waist, his heartbeat, and suddenly she realized exactly where she was. Julian's arms. Her own hands were wrapped around him. One of her legs was resting between his. Her entire body instantly stiffened. Julian felt it immediately. Her heartbeat sped up so fast he could practically feel it against his chest. He almost smiled. Almost. Instead, he gently stroked her hair again. Julian wasn't pretending to be asleep anymore. "It's okay." His voice was deep and sleepy. His hand moved to the back of her head and gently stroked her hair. "Relax, Sophia." The words should have helped. Instead, her heart started racing even more. Julian. His chin brushed lightly against the top of her head. He sounded completely calm, as if waking up with his wife wrapped around him wasn't affecting him at all. Meanwhile, inside his chest, his heart was trying to break free. Sophia swallowed. Her fingers clutched his shirt slightly. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to explain herself. Her face was burning. She felt embarrassed. And then the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "I'm sorry." Julian's brows pulled together immediately. "Why?" His hand moved slowly up and down her back, as if there wasn't a single thing in the world she needed to apologize for. "I shouldn't have come here without asking." Julian looked at her for a second before letting out a small breath. "And why exactly do you think you needed permission?" Sophia blinked. He continued softly, "Sophia." His voice softened further. "You are my wife." The words made her chest tighten. "You don't need permission to come here. And you definitely don't need permission to sleep beside me." That did it. Something inside her cracked. Because he sounded so sincere, so genuine, like he truly believed every word. Unable to handle it, she quickly pulled away from him, far away, almost to the edge of the bed. Julian immediately felt the empty space she left behind. His heart dropped. "Sophia." He opened his arms slightly. "Please come back here." She shook her head immediately. "Stop." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. She pulled her knees closer to her chest, trying to make herself smaller, trying to hide. "I only came here because I couldn't sleep." She looked away. "It doesn't mean anything else." A lie. And both of them knew it. Julian didn't call her out. He never would. Instead, he nodded. "I know." His voice remained calm. "I know. That's why you came." He shifted slightly closer. Not enough to corner her. Just enough so she knew he was there. "And that's okay." His hand remained extended toward her. "I just want you to sleep well." His fingers gently touched hers. "That's all." Sophia stared at their hands, then slowly held onto one of his fingers. Just one, as if she wasn't ready for anything more. Julian's breath almost caught. Such a tiny gesture, yet it meant everything. He carefully moved closer until their foreheads almost touched. "I don't like you or anything," Sophia blurted out suddenly. The words sounded defensive, embarrassed. Julian's smile never disappeared. "It's okay if you don't." Her eyes immediately lifted to his. and that hurt her more than if he had argued, because he wasn't asking for anything. And somehow that made her want to cry. But please, his thumb gently brushed against her knuckles. Please let me love you. Sophia froze. I'm not asking you to love me back. I never will. I just want you to stop shutting me out. A painful lump formed in her throat, and suddenly tears started burning behind her eyes. Why are you like this? Sophia looked away before continuing. I don't do anything. A tear slipped down her cheek. I don't do anything that would make you love me this much. Another tear followed. You keep trying. You keep making me comfortable. You take care of me. You notice everything. You make me tea. You wait for me. You make me feel safe. Her voice trembled harder. And what do I do? Julian opened his mouth, but she shook her head. No, she wiped her eyes. I do nothing. The tears were falling freely now. It makes me feel guilty. Her shoulders shook. It makes me sick knowing you're trying so hard while I'm giving you nothing back. Julian's heart shattered. Not because she didn't love him, but because she genuinely believed she had given him nothing. What are you saying? Julian asked softly. You never push me away when I kiss your forehead. You always eat whatever I cook, even when I'm pretty sure it's not my best attempt. You always drink the tea I make for you. A small smile appeared on his face. And every night you come here and fall asleep beside me. How is that doing nothing? Sophia opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. Julian continued. Do you know how happy that makes me? Do you know how good it feels knowing you trust me enough to sleep beside me? His voice became quieter. Do you know how many times I've woken up and found you sleeping beside me and had to stop myself from smiling like an idiot? A small laugh escaped Sophia. Sophia, I don't love you because I expect something back. He nudged her nose lightly. How would that even be love? She looked down at their joined hands. You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. You've been a good daughter, a good granddaughter. You always put everyone before yourself. Sophia's eyes widened. Did you talk to Grandma? Julian smiled. Yes. She told me you're the most stubborn person she's ever met. Sophia gasped. Julian laughed. But then she said something else. His eyes softened. She said that once someone gets past your walls, you're one of the warmest people they'll ever meet. Sophia immediately buried her face against his chest. The tears she had been holding back finally escaped. Julian wrapped his arms around her without hesitation. Did you talk to Grandma? Julian smiled. Yes. She told me you're the most stubborn person she's ever met. Sophia gasped. Julian laughed. But then she said something else. His eyes softened. She said that once someone gets past your walls, you're one of the warmest people they'll ever meet. Sophia immediately buried her face against his chest. The tears she had been holding back finally escaped. Julian wrapped his arms around her without hesitation. She cried quietly against him. I'm sorry, she whispered. I really am. His hand moved slowly across her back. You don't have to apologize, but I do. Her voice shook. I don't know when it happened. She gripped his shirt tighter. But I feel safe with you. Julian closed his eyes. I feel loved with you. His heart almost stopped. And I want you to feel loved too. She wiped at her eyes. But every time I try, I remember why this marriage happened. My father made the decision for me. Her voice broke. And every time I start accepting this marriage, I feel guilty because it wasn't my choice. I was forced into this. I'm sorry that happened to you, Sophia. His voice was gentle. You deserve to choose for yourself. She looked up at him. But can I tell you something? She nodded. I've loved you for a very long time. Sophia blinked. What? I tried following you on social media. A laugh escaped her. You never accepted my request. I didn't know it was you. She lied. You ignored me for months. She laughed harder. Julian couldn't stop smiling. I tried talking to you at business events. You always looked scary. Scary? You never smiled. That is not true, he defended. It is. Julian sighed dramatically. Fine. Maybe a little. Sophia laughed again. He paused for a moment, simply admiring the sound. Then his voice became softer. When my father told me our marriage had been arranged, I was happy, because I was already planning to tell you about my feelings. But then I found out you didn't want it. His smile faded. Your grandma told me everything. She told me you weren't happy, that you were fighting with your father every day, that you kept trying to convince him to let you decide your own future. Sophia felt her chest ache. She remembered every argument, every time she had begged him to listen. You don't know how hard that was to hear. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "The people who are supposed to protect you, support you, stand beside you." His eyes softened. "We're making decisions for your life without asking what you wanted. So I made a promise to myself that no matter how this marriage started, you would never feel alone. I don't know if I've succeeded, but you have." The answer escaped her immediately. "You have Julian." "I feel like the meanest person alive." His eyebrows immediately pulled together. "Don't say that." "But it's true. You've been trying so hard every single day. And all this time I've just been standing here feeling angry at everyone except the person who was trying to love me." Julian's entire expression softened. "Sophia, you're so precious, Julian." A faint blush appeared on his face, and for some reason that made her smile. "You deserve to be loved too." Julian looked away immediately, embarrassed, which only made her smile wider. "And I promise I'm not holding myself back anymore. I'll love you properly too." "I love you, Sophia." Julian's eyes held nothing except honesty, and somehow that made her even more nervous. She wanted to say something back, something meaningful, something that would tell him how much his words meant to her. But no matter how much she searched for the right sentence, nothing came out. So she followed the only instinct she had. She slowly leaned closer. Julian blinked. His entire body seemed to freeze. "Sophia, I am kissing you, okay?" His eyes widened slightly. "You are?" She nodded nervously. "Yes." A small laugh almost escaped him. Not because he was making fun of her, because she was so serious about it. "You sure?" Sophia immediately bit her lip. "Well, I don't really know how to do it." Her cheeks warmed. "But I'll try my best." Julian's heart nearly gave up right there. A smile appeared on his face before he carefully leaned back against the pillow, giving her all the space she needed. "Okay?" His voice was softer now. "Take your time." Sophia nodded. She shifted closer until she was almost hovering above him. Every movement made her more aware of how close they were, how close his face was. "You know," he said quietly. "What? The fact that you wanted to kiss me is making my heart do something weird." A small laugh escaped her. "You know something?" My heart is being weird too." That made him smile. A real smile. Slowly, Sophia moved a little closer, then a little more, until there was barely any distance left between them. Sophia looked at his lips and immediately became shy. This suddenly felt much scarier than she had imagined, but she had already come this far. Parting her lips slightly, she caught his lower lip between them, holding it there for a moment before slowly letting it go. "Your lips are soft." He couldn't take the slow teasing anymore. The way she kept brushing against his lips only to pull away again. His hand slid to the back of her head, gently guiding her closer until her lips met his properly. Her fingers tightened around the bedsheet beside him as his lips moved against hers. He was trying to be gentle. She could tell that much. But every few seconds his restraint seemed to slip away. So she took the initiative, parting her lips wider and slowly letting her tongue slip inside his mouth. The moment she did that, his breath got caught. Even while lying down, his knees felt weak. His fingers slipped into her hair as the kiss deepened. He kissed her back with growing desperation, meeting every movement of her lips. Their tongues tangled together as he explored her mouth, his lips sucking hers again and again. The soft sounds of their kisses filled the room, making both of their heads feel dizzy. Neither of them wanted to pull away, neither willing to be the first to break the moment. Then, ever so gently, he shifted above her without breaking the kiss. The new angle only made it deeper. One hand remained buried in her hair, while the other rested beside her, keeping himself close. "You're addictive." Sophia's lips curved into a small smile. "Am I?" He nodded immediately, his thumb moving in slow circles against her side, sending a soft shiver through her. "I love you, Julian. I really do." His eyes searched hers immediately, as if he needed to make sure those words were real. "You're not lying, right?" he asked quietly. "Because my heart is racing so fast right now." A soft laugh escaped her. "I'm not lying. I love you, and I never want to lose you." Her fingers gently brushed through his hair. "I love being with you. I love seeing your face first thing in the morning. I love sneaking into your room every night. I love how you always make tea for me. And I love when you kiss me out of nowhere." Julian stared at her for a moment, completely speechless. "You have no idea what you're doing to me right now, do you?" he whispered. Before she could answer, he leaned forward and pressed another kiss to her lips. A slow one, the kind he never seemed able to get enough of. His wife, his Sophia, the woman he had spent years loving in silence. the woman who was finally looking at him the same way. And then, suddenly, her stomach growled. The sound was loud enough to make both of them freeze. Sophia immediately covered her face. "Oh no," Julian stared at her. I guess you're hungry," she mumbled. "Absolutely," he replied. "I think that's a very serious emergency." She rolled her eyes. "Julian, what?" "My wife is starving." His grin was impossible to hide. Sophia shook her head, trying to stop laughing. The happiness on his face made her chest feel warm. For so long he had loved her quietly. Now, he didn't have to hide it anymore. Julian suddenly stood up. Before she could ask what he was doing, his arms slipped around her. "Julian." A surprised gasp left her lips as he lifted her effortlessly into his arms. "What? You can't just pick me up without warning." "I can. I'm your husband." She immediately wrapped her arms around his neck to keep herself steady. The smile on his face grew even bigger. "Oh, this feels so nice. Hugging you whenever I want, carrying you around, loving you openly." Sophia's expression melted. She leaned forward and kissed his cheek, then another, and another. Julian almost looked ready to pass out from happiness. "Oh, Sophia, what? I am so in love with you. Please don't get sick of me. I'll try my best to control myself." Her smile softened. "You don't have to." Julian blinked. "You can love me as much as you want." His heart nearly stopped. "Because I feel the same." For a moment, he simply stared at her. Then a helpless chuckle escaped him. He kissed her cheek before turning toward the kitchen. All right, what? "I am going to make my wife the best pancakes she has ever had." Sophia's eyes brightened immediately. "I would really love that." Julian smiled. And carrying her the entire way, he walked toward the kitchen like letting her go wasn't even an option anymore.